It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Trajan Wealth brings you this portion of the show, TRAJANwealth.com, for all your trusted local needs in retirement. He is the coach, Tim LaComb, pre, half, and post for the Utah Jazz on the Jazz Radio Network. And then, of course, all-around good dude and also a friend of the program. And he's also kind of a savant when it comes to making picks because all the things that we've talked about with this NBA and all the things that could happen in the college world, it seems like you get all this stuff right, Coach. I would assume don't try to pull the humility thing. Go full Stevenson Sylvester on us and just say, yeah, I'm that smart, man.
What's that? Dang, I had the perfect line, but I forgot it. The bowler. It said, "You know what I am? I can't remember what it was.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, Alex. Alex has probably got her
Who
somewhere.
do you think you are? I am.
It's the guy.
That's it. Who do you think you are? I am.
Yeah.
No,
and
you know what?
That's you.
I'm just trying to be the best me I can be, man. That's all.
When you watch the NFL draft and compare it to what happens with the NBA draft, is there anything comparable that goes on? They're two totally different worlds. But the guesswork that has to happen at both levels is insane. And we see guys drop, but like when you see the Shedeur Sanders thing go on, do you look and then you go, boy, I'm glad that the NBA draft doesn't have 6 and 7 rounds because this would be wild every year.
Oh, for sure. And obviously it's a numbers game and a lot more guys on the football field and a lot more on the roster, and so they deal with that. I actually was not shocked by the Shedeur Sanders thing. I was not a huge proponent. I did feel like, he threw the football around a lot, but, when it comes to some of those things, like just common respect for other people, I can see where he rubs some teams wrong, and, you have to probably sign on to put up with a lot. And so not really surprised. It was surprising, I guess, that he became the story, but much like the LeVar Ball situation, it was pretty daddy-driven.
Well, and you gotta, if you have the tape, the NFL will sign you up. They don't care. Like, oh yeah, you've got a bad attitude and you rub people the wrong way. Yeah, but if you're the best, they will take you. And the real draft grade comes from the guys in those war rooms. I think that's kind of the end of it. The media can say whatever they want, but the guys who didn't pick him because it didn't seem like he was good enough. On top of all the negatives that come with it as well. It's complicated.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Tim. You coached for a long time at the college level. Was there ever a point where there was a kid who you guys really wanted, but after you sat down and talked to him, you're like, you know what? No, we can't do this because there's just too many issues here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a huge part of the process. You get a really talented group of guys, and then you're trying to obviously get talent, but there's a give and take, no question. And look, I'm not a hater. Like I think, he definitely, like I said, he threw for gaudy numbers and all those things. But to me, just watching the game, he holds on to the ball too long. And I just watched the NFL, and it's such a split-second decision type league. On the plus side, our guy Caleb Lohner got taken, which is really cool.
That's wild.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I started recruiting Caleb when he was an 8th grader, so I've known him for a long time. And we stayed in touch through the years and become really good buddies, and so that was really neat to see for him. You just never know, man. You just keep waking up every day and see where life's going to take you.
You didn't write down on the scouting report. Probably a good tight end for some team in the future. Probably be a really good.
In 8th grade, you know what his comp was in 8th grade was to me. I called coach when I left the gym the first time I saw him, and he was really long and lean.
Yeah.
And he could really shoot the ball for a big guy. And so I said, hey, I see some Gordon Hayward here.
Wow.
He never really developed into that skilled basketball guy, but I think it's partly because he had so many stinking interests. He had so many things he loved to do. But football comes naturally, obviously his size and then his speed at the combine. I think that was the thing that, kind of flipped the switch for teams to take a chance.
No, his just elite athleticism at his height and his size. They talked. Sean Payton was talking about watching him run routes for the first time at Big 12 the Big 12 Pro Day, and that's when they were sold on him. So you can't, that's the thing you can't teach, right? Is athleticism, and he's got it in spades.
Yes, he does, and like you said, that height, that'll be an interesting dilemma for corners, and particularly down near the goal line, like Utah used him. So excited for him. But, Shedeur has now an opportunity to just go out and shut everybody up, and make a name for himself. But that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, nobody wants, and I'd love to see him succeed. It'd be a great story.
I would too.
It's a good lesson, though, for all of us that, like, you're not entitled to anything. Like, the idea that you can walk into a job interview and think you already got the job or you don't even need to show up, like, it's a good reminder to everybody. Like, you need to carry a certain level of humility with you.
Well, and I was shocked that that's how DJ and PK got their job.
Wow. There's
sector.
exceptions,
They
Tim.
didn't cut. Yeah, look,
Like Alex was saying earlier.
If you've already got the talent, why would you even show up?
There's some that are just so great, you'll put up with anything.
Come on, man.
Hey, you check my name. Here's my ID. You might know me.
Well, let's get on to the NBA playoffs, which have been extremely intriguing. At the very least, and you don't love to hear this. If you're a league guy, you're not like, oh, awesome, more talk about the referees. But my goodness, the Detroit Pistons, if they've got a gripe, to be able to have a game go down like that, and then for you to fall down 3-1, it's such a different story than going down 2-2. But that Pistons team has really surprised me with being such a competitive team, even though they did go down 3-1.
I agree. It's fun when Detroit's good at basketball. I mean, it just kind of harkens the good old days.
Yeah.
And, it's great to see that uniform in the playoffs, and they got a bona fide star in Cunningham. Mm-hmm. I mean, that guy's built to carry a team, and it's taken him a couple of years to get there. But that's the development piece we talk about a lot on pre and post. And we watch Jazz guys improve their standing in the league this year, and that's what Cade's done. That was a bummer, that last call. And the only thing I'll say on it is I can't tell you how many hours are wasted in my year by watching reviews, whether the ball knocked off a finger with 14 seconds left in the game
Amen.
or, 5 minutes left in the game, but yet we're going to have a play that basically decides the game as the officials admitted they missed. And they're going to miss some. But, man, there should be something that you can do. Like, that's where you have, like, the ultimate red card to throw out on the court and say, review that one. So that's a bummer. But the playoffs are crazy. They're fun. You see a totally different level from these guys than you do in the regular season. And I think that's probably the most apparent thing to me thus far.
Well, what wasn't fun was watching Damian Lillard go down last night, a guy that we've followed for a long time, and just my heart breaks for him. At age 34, 35, to go through that kind of injury is going to be tough for him. But what that does, Tim, is it could end up causing some disruption. And following the Jazz, or being a Jazz fan, you're looking around the league for some disruption because the Jazz could use some disruption in this league to jar loose a few good players. Are the Bucks one of those teams that have to look at if this series doesn't go their way, they're down 3-1? Is it crazy to think that that's a team that won a title just 4 years ago, but they might be looking at blowing that thing up?
Well, the windows are so short, and so much talent comes into this league on a yearly basis, and really the complexion of the league changes year to year, and so it's not outlandish, right, to think that they may make a move. I think the time the Jazz moved Donovan and Rudy, the teams that were recipients of that were obviously in line. They had the assets to do it, and I think that's what Danny's talked about all along. The big game hunting. You don't always get the big game, but you go out there and you scour and you look for those opportunities. There's another one in Phoenix, with the way their season went. So
and the Grizzlies too.
The Grizzlies too. And you look back to the way Danny put the Celtics together the first time. It was a combination of guys on the latter end of their time with the club. Obviously, you look at Garnett, and he was such a big part of that. But, it really took timing on all those parts to make that happen. And that is the one thing that I will go to my deathbed and say that makes Danny so great is he's so patient. And the deal he gets is the deal he wants. And he does not cave, So the Jazz, they're a player in all of this stuff. It just depends on how it swings.
Well, speaking of Rudy and Donovan, both are still in these playoffs. Both are a win away from advancing to the next round of these playoffs, obviously on different teams. But you've got the Cavs, who are absolutely dominant, and they could wrap that thing up against the Heat today. How surprised are you that the Timberwolves have been putting it together and that the Lakers are starting to kind of fade away while the Timberwolves are finding a little bit more of a stride?
Not surprised at all about that. I was never a fan of of the Lakers, any version of them this year. I mean, obviously Luka and LeBron pose a real issue offensively, but in that same token, watch their defensive film and, watch the effort that Luka gives defensively. LeBron's a little bit limited, but I mean, his effort's always there, but Luka's just such a bad defender, and they don't have dominant bigs. So, teams are going to have their way with them. And Minnesota, this year, after getting to the conference finals last year, I mean, they were a team that were definitely, I guess they were the finals, right?
Yeah, conference finals,
yeah.
Yes.
Conference finals, right? So, and they obviously had a ton of success. And so I just think they obviously learned from the regular season. You see different lineups. Rudy's not out there as much. He's about 25 minutes a game. But they're a dominant team because they have a dominant player in Anthony Edwards. And at the end of the day, that's what the playoffs come down to, is whose dominant player is going to be better.
You see, obviously the Lakers made a great decision in making that trade with the Mavericks. Not what I'm saying at all here, but with Luka's problems on defense, what do the Lakers need to do around him moving forward into the future? Because LeBron's not going to be around that much longer. What do the Lakers need to do to win with Luka now that they've got him?
I think they need to surround him with they got to go get a good big in free agency if they can. But they need somebody to protect the rim because that's going to be a huge piece. When you have four guys defending on your five, there's going to be holes at the rim, and you got to have somebody clean that up. And then the other thing, I would surround him with shooters. He is as gifted a playmaker, and his size allows him to make plays that, the average guy can't make. He sees over the top and sees the corners and sees the dunker spot. He's always got such a good feel. So I would surround him with great shooters and a good big, but the Lakers, they're pretty cash strapped too. And,
yeah.
They're kind of out of moves and out of chips. So it would have to be something that fell their way.
The Celtics are exactly what we thought they were, which is not just the world champs, but they might not have the best record in the East this year. The Cavaliers were exceptional this season, but the Celtics are the kind of bar none favorite, I think, for a lot of people. And until proven otherwise, and until a time like Jason Tatum, I mean, when he has nights like last night with 37 and what did he end up with rebounds-wise? 14 rebounds and 3 steals. When you have a night like that from the best player on the best team in the league, it's hard to bet against those guys. Are the Celtics still the team to beat in the East, or do you think the Cavaliers have enough firepower if they're able to fire up against them in the conference finals?
Well, I love the moves Cleveland made. I love the fact they went out and got more size, on the perimeter with DeAndre Hunter, and he's been a great add. They've had guys develop. Evan Mobley's changed his game as much as anybody from one year to the next this season, and, his dominance around the rim, blocking shots, getting rebounds, those sorts of things really have shored up what was, a good team, but I think they have become a great team. And now the challenge for them is they have great momentum. Can they close out Miami tonight and get some rest and then be ready to rock and roll again? Their challenge is to knock off the champ. And Majerus used to say it all the time in our locker room. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. There's a lot that comes with that. You're taking everybody's best shots. And until the Celtics are proved, otherwise, they're the champs. That's the way I look at it. And I do think that they're the most complete team. Like, they can play different rosters. They can play different ways. But the team is always the essence of that club. And I think that's what makes them great. Pritchard can get you 40 in a night, and that's just crazy. But they're built for the playoffs and playing matchups and being able to kind of match personnel to matchups. So I think they're in a good place.
Looking ahead, and we have the benefit now of seeing the first round, but I was curious to know who you think is going to meet up in the finals from the West and the East. Now having the benefit of seeing the first round, has that changed at all, or you still have the two teams locked in that you had to start?
I think Oklahoma City's going to get there, obviously.
You think they're for real?
They quickly dispatched the Grizzlies and did not play with their food. Even in games where they got down, they came back.
Oh, that 29-point comeback was all I needed to be sold on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bummer for me is I've got to admit David Locke's right, because David was saying that he felt like Minnesota would be in the final all year long. And, they were teetering at one point whether they even made the playoffs. And they really picked up steam late in the season. But I think it's going to be OKC and Minnesota coming out of the West. And out of the East, it will be the Cavs. I think the Cavs will get there, and I think they'll have to beat I'm sorry. They'll play will they play the Celtics? Will they play the Celtics?
They would, yeah.
They'd have to play the Celtics.
In the Eastern Conference final.
So I do think Indiana's interesting and intriguing and could beat Cleveland. So I'm going to put that in there as a bookmark for next week. But I love what Indiana's doing. I think they may have just enough juice to beat Cleveland. So I'm going to say Indiana, Boston.
Ooh.
I don't hate that pick, especially since nobody wants to give Indiana any credit in the East right now, and they're playing pretty dang good basketball. I've also been impressed with what Kawhi and the Clippers have done so far. I know that it's not – I mean, that's tied up at 2 apiece, and the Nuggets have been hit and miss all season long. But
whoever wins that series against the Thunder in the semifinals is going to be awesome.
I just dismissed both of those teams because neither of them seem to be playing very good basketball kind of running up to this thing. But you can't – it's hard to deny a guy like Kawhi when he's playing decent.
You're right. And when he's healthy, he's a real problem, and he's been unbelievably efficient. What he can do on the boards, but he certainly makes that Clippers team way more interesting, way more impactful. I agree with JJ. I think that's going to be a heck of a series, whoever comes out of that. But I think Oklahoma City's too much. And for many of the reasons I talked about Boston, I think they've done a nice job at having multiple, like their offseason last year was incredible for their culture. Like they went and got Caruso and Hartenstein. I mean, those two guys were born to be on this Thunder team. So I think they have an understanding of what their guys do well, and they can throw matchups out there to have the luxury of a Lou Dort, a Caruso, a Jalen Williams. I mean, that's a ton of talent, and we're not even talking about the top level in Gilgeous-Alexander.
Tim LaComb, he's the coach. Tim, we would never take you in the 5th round, brother. You're our first-round draft pick, my guy.
I'm a walk-on. Like literally, my career in basketball became. I knocked on the door of Jeff Judkins at the University of Utah and said I'd like to volunteer my services. So I got no issues being a walk-on. I just want to be invited to the party.
Minicamp invite is okay as well. All right,
That's
Coach, we
totally
appreciate
fine.
it. Thanks for the breakdowns, and we'll chat with you again and have fun this week watching these games.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
There you go, Tim LaComb.
That's great.